don't think there's much to talk about with Akasam. It's a fine early game boss, a slightly different bird than the usual stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it fit the theme of the game quite well. And
Yeah,
I think that's why I mean, it was in a lot of the previews and
promotional
everything.
material.
Yeah. Um, but the fight itself, I think, is a little underwhelming.
Yeah, it tries to do some kind of cool stuff with like its wings as a shield and to flip you up with its head crest, but I don't know. Easy enough to start off the game with.
Yeah. I'd say
I think
it's,
other monsters fill its role better for like teaching you how to dodge and stuff.
I'd agree. I'd agree. I'd say a solid C on this one.
Mhm.
I don't think it deserves anything better.
Correct.
Um, Almadron. This one also completely brand new, also very heavily promoted. And I think it meets its standards a little bit better.
I think so too. And I think there's very well defined phases of the fights when it starts to set up the arena that it creates with its mud. That's always really cool. It really encourages you to use the wire bugs in a neat way. So
Yeah, and
I really enjoyed this fight.
it going underground as well and doing all those attacks with its tail and creating that mud ball, I think is really
Hmm.
unique. And after doing all the crown farming, this is actually one that it took me, like, I just got unlucky and it took me a forever. So I did this like 15, 20 times in a row. And I actually
Hmm.
had, I was surprised at how not tired of it I was at the end of it.
Right. It feels like you're winning the jackpot when you get that mud ball and you just get to go a little crazy on it.
Exactly. So I call it an A. I definitely don't think it breaks into S tier, but
Yeah,
very solid
that's fair for
for
me.
an early game monster. I don't think a lot of them
Hmm.
stand out that much, but Almadron does a very good job.
A more fun mud monster than usually is in Monster Hunter
That's very
to
true.
me.
Anjanath. Um,
It, kind of a beat stick. Like
yeah,
you get what it's
they
doing.
haven't changed anything about it in a very long
Yeah,
time.
I didn't
Um,
think this version of it compared to World felt that new or exciting. I think it fit World a bit better. It
yeah,
just kind
it
of
feels
seems
like they just
slow.
threw it in there to throw it in there, and it didn't do very much. I don't
Yeah.
remember it. I don't remember the first time fighting it. I don't really remember the last time I fought it either.
It's kind
Um,
of one that whenever I see that that's the target of the quest, it's like, oh, it's kind of easy. This fight's not going to be special.
yeah, just kind of
Once you get it
suspect.
toppled once, it's pretty much over.
Exactly. With that, I'd say pretty easy D tier. Do not
Yeah,
think
there's
anything special went into
right.
that one.
Apex Arzuros. As the first Apex, I think it was a pretty big difficulty jump, at least in base rise. The first time you really see it do the same attack that a regular Arzuros does, but just chunks your health pretty good.
Yeah, I remember being very surprised at how, like, I definitely got caught out and one shot a couple times by its
Hmm.
big, just kind of sidearm swipe.
Yeah,
Um, but honestly, out of all the Apexes, I didn't think it would hold up, but I think it did do well just because it was the first one. And
right.
in base Rise, it was just a big challenge for newer players, especially, I'm sure. But I
Yeah.
thought it was a lot of fun in the end. So actually,
Hmm.
I thought it went pretty well.
Definitely think it's better than regular Arzuros, so
Absolutely. I with that,
big upgrade.
I'm not sure if it goes into A tier. Honestly, I'm
No, I
thinking
don't think
B,
so either.
but I
It's
think a
only so much
solid
it
B.
does when it's running around.
Yeah,
But a good introduction to Apex is for
yeah.
sure.
I think it'll fall on the lower end of B tier at the end of things, but
Right.
definitely
Yeah,
still
yeah.
a very good monster. And with the Apexes brought back, I still don't think it was the best thing to bring them back and then kind of not follow up
Yeah.
on them, but still did a good
I
job.
get that it didn't really fit the theme of Sunbreak. That was kind of the base rise with the rampage, but I don't know. Feel like they could have done a little more with them other than just throw them in anomalies as extra targets.
Yeah, they basically just had the end of Rise as the three Apex quest and then kind of just cut it off there.
Hmm.
Going into Apex Diablos, honestly, I don't see this one as in as good of a light. I think they didn't do too much. I don't think they did enough to it to make it feel
Yeah,
like
the only
something as
thing,
special as Bloodbath.
yeah, it lost all the spectacle of Bloodbath. The only move that I think sometimes catches people out is when regular Diablos does like the attack where it buries its hand at kind of a diagonal angle.
Mm-hmm.
This one does it twice instead of just
Yep.
once.
Yep.
And I see people get hit by that a lot, but it doesn't seem like they really changed that much
Yeah, exactly.
with it.
And they did that to a lot of the monsters where it's just, oh, they do that one pretty big attack twice, and that's
Yeah,
like how they catch you out. But definitely didn't
especially
feel super
after
overwhelming.
like actually fighting Bloodbath, it felt like a letdown.
Exactly. So I'd say C tier.
Hmm.
Don't think it lived up. Mizutsune, however, I think was pretty cool. Um,
Yeah, but
definitely
I don't
was a
know.
lot slippier and
Hmm.
just like doing the full twist with the water spout spray.
Right, right. But
Uh,
it's hard for me to distance Apex Mizusune from Violet. Feels like it's been forever since I did this Apex one.
that's very true. I did like Violet a lot more
Hmm.
because they added a lot more unique mechanics. Like the homing bubbles was like one of the coolest new attacks I think that they brought out.
Right. Hmm.
But I still enjoy Apex Mizusune. I remember when I was doing the 3 Apex hunt for the crowns, like I completely forgot though, and this applies to all the Apexes, but when they roar, it like does that ringing in your ears
Hmm.
sound.
Yep.
And I actually forgot about that, and it was really cool to go back and remember that. And I don't know why they don't do that for like more of the bigger, like super end game like story monsters. I think that was a
Yeah.
really cool effect. Um, but I think I'd agree. This probably goes at the same place as Diablos. Um,
Yeah.
but I would say a little bit better, and I'd put it definitely above Akhenasom for sure.
Right. Yeah. Apex
Rathlos
Wrath.
and Rathian. Honestly, I think I like Rathian a bit more.
Hmm.
I always remember it's just a lot more intimidating with the tail when it's coming down from the sky and
Yeah. Kind of
doing like that
started to
big
do that
spin.
kick flip. Yep.
Yeah. So
And then that's the first one that gives you the extra poison, nauseous poison.
exactly. So definitely really hard to deal with and kind of makes you use those wire bugs to their fullest potential in
Mm.
Rise. And all Rathlos really has is the massive fireball attack. I honestly don't remember
Right.
any other super special attacks from that Apex.
I would say Rathalos felt lackluster again compared to its other versions in this game.
I would agree.
But I liked Rathian more.
I,
But
I'd agree. I'd say Rathian would be B. Rathalos probably C again.
yeah,
And then Zenogre. This one didn't stand out for me either.
it's just kind of Zenogre if he was powered up the whole time.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'm not a
There's,
huge fan of Zenogre still. Uh,
yeah,
I know he's a lot of people's like favorite monster, and he's been in all the games and this and that, but it always feels underwhelming, and I don't know. I don't think
yeah,
they really change anything ever about him just because they want him to stay that nostalgic classic for people. But
mhm,
I feel like there needs to be a big change about something. Um,
yeah. And I think one thing you lose, one part of the Zenogre fight I like is how in the beginning it's kind of running around charging up, and you get those big openings for damage to try to knock it out of that charging up phase. And then this Apex one just bypasses that whole process,
yeah, that's true.
which is fine. Just I don't like the flow of the fight as much with the Apex.
Yeah, and I know this is gonna sound terrible, but I'd personally put this at D tier. I
Yeah,
dislike it that much. Um, I I think a lot of people would have a different opinion. I don't know about you, but this is probably a D tier for
no,
me.
I it's never one I would go out of my way to fight.
I would definitely agree with that. Arzuros, as we already talked about, again they haven't changed much, but is still
Mhm.
this is an actual classic that I think holds up well, and is
Yeah.
always a nice introduction and probably difficult enough for new players, but kind of just something you pass through and like, hey, Arzuros is back for experienced
Hmm.
hunters and just kind of breeze through it at the start of the game, but always fun. Still has the honey mechanic, Nothing's changed
Yeah.
there. So I think a timeless classic for sure.
Yeah, I like that they kind of sped up when he just gets on all fours and runs at you, tries to tackle you. That one feels a little quicker to incentivize not just doing one side roll to get out of the way.
Yeah, very true. I'd probably
Good
put
early game
this,
monster.
yeah, right around
Very
where
fine.
Aknosam is in C,
Yeah.
I'd say. Um, I think I actually, just because Aknosam's a new monster, I think I like it a tiny bit more, to be honest. But
Hmm. That's fair.
um, now Astalos returning. I remember us fighting this in the demo, being super
I was
excited.
super excited for it before, but after like fighting it in Rise, something just didn't feel as good as it did in uh, Cross and Double Cross.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I didn't play either of those, so I mean, lacking a little bit of perspective there. I think it was really nice, and just visually, I think it's one of the best looking monsters in the game for sure
Oh yeah.
when it's
I do
enraged.
like that it's very easy to tell where its weak spots become when it starts powering up. I always like fights with well-defined phases. It's just that when they aren't lit up, it feels like you're doing nothing to them.
It's true. It's a lot like Kushal in that way,
Yep.
where you just kind of feel useless for a little while. Um, but I remember having a lot of fun with it, and I think it was also because it was paired with Jungle coming back,
Right. Yep.
which I think made it feel a little bit better in the demo. It was in Jungle, so I'd say this is probably at the end of B tier. I think
Yeah.
I really liked it. Um,
Super cool monster. Love all the weapons and armor designs. Just
yeah, very
didn't
true.
click as much for me in this one.
Yeah, the great sword just looks fantastic.
Yeah.
See, Aurora Somnicanth before even regular Somnicanth.
I'm not a huge fan of either. It
I,
just feels like they kind of do their own thing while you wallop on
I mean, I
them.
think it was really them trying to make a better fish, to be
Hmm.
honest, and I think they succeeded in a lot of ways because it slithers around a lot, but also then comes up and does like the big breath attacks and everything like that. I think Somnicanth definitely was pretty underwhelming for one of the newer monsters. I was really excited about it at first, but then actually fighting it, I don't think was as fun. I think
Right.
Aurora was pretty good though. It was like definitely annoying to fight, put to sleep a lot, and was Aurora the ice one? It was ice
Yeah,
and sleep.
it kind of gives you that like Northern Lights effect
Yeah,
before it does the big blast.
yeah. Um, but I think Aurora was, and a lot of the not variants,
Subspecies. I'm not
subspecies.
sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, um, were pretty good, but
Yeah.
I think
I
they
think
were
most
around the
were an
same.
improvement of the original.
Yeah, and there's only one exception to that, which we'll get to, in my opinion. But I think both probably. I think Aurora probably makes C, but I think would put normal in D tier. If
Yeah.
I'm being honest.
And maybe it's something I just never took the time to figure out. When they do the like flashbang thing that they open on their chest,
Hmm.
I could never quite figure out what you were supposed to do, whether you turn your hunter away, you turn your camera
Yeah, I
away.
remember. I remember us struggling with that because nothing we seemed to do worked, and it like flashed us no matter what.
Yeah. Maybe it's just proximity, so you have to get out of there.
Yeah,
That one always just kind of felt a little too random. There wasn't a clear tell of what I was supposed to do.
yeah, exactly. Uh,
Very
Going to Barath. Honestly, coming into Rise and Sunbreak, Barath was like my least favorite monster in the series. Again,
mm,
I know that's not a popular opinion, um, but I gotta say, I think this is the game where I actually started liking Barath.
I
I don't.
think in this one, it feels so good once you get those first couple part breaks. He is on you, he's moving around, jumping, but then once you like break one wing and it starts slipping or break the tusk, so it like just kind of fails at its breath attacks.
Yeah, and I think they mixed in a good amount of aerial combat, and with this one
Hmm.
too, I remember not necessarily, and the flash bombs aren't as OP as they have been in past games. So like you get him
Right.
down maybe the once, but then he stays in the air for a while after. And I remember
Hmm.
that just being a lot more satisfying with his tornadoes and just coming down, doing that big leap from ground air ground.
Yeah.
and it just felt a lot more satisfying to fight him in this one.
Yep.
So I think it's a big improvement. Honestly, I would put him in B. This would have been a D tier monster for me in maybe any other game.
That's improvement. That's
It's
improvement.
definitely improvement.
But I'd agree, yeah. There's a pretty good arena quest with him that was in base game, and that was when I was trying to get arena medals for all the weapons, so spent a lot of time with Barrier.
Yeah. Baroth holds a
I
special
got a
place in
lot of
my
love for
heart.
Baroth.
Yeah.
I got a
Uh,
lot of love for him.
remember in Try, myself as a young lad, not being able to figure out why my dual blades were doing no damage to Baroth.
Where you really learn about bouncing and hit zones.
Yeah. And something that I learned, I don't know how I didn't know this previously, but breaking off the scalp when I was playing Hammer in base game, just like forgot completely about like blunt weapons are the only thing, like the only way you can get that part break
Hmm.
and carve in the
Yep.
scalp. So
Which
always,
doesn't show up very often.
it really doesn't. And it's like if you're not targeting it or you're at the point where you're a lot stronger than Baroth, you usually just kill him anyway.
Right.
So very good. Obviously, they haven't changed too much about him,
Mm-mm.
but I think
But
still
I
very
think
well executed.
yeah, you know where he's gonna hit you. It's just you kind of gotta adapt to that.
Yeah, exactly. Um, with that, I'm not sure if he breaks into A, but I think he's
Right.
right at the top of B. Uh,
He's like my favorite early game monster.
yeah, for sure. One of my not so favorite early game monsters. Speaking of bouncing, um,
Yeah.
I mean, I know they have like the double roll and everything, and it's fun to get the part breaks and then not see him do the big lava
Mhm.
spout, but it still just doesn't stand out. And
Right. And in Master Rank, when the like rollover attack, they made it like a couple seconds longer.
mm-hmm,
It feels like if you go anywhere near him during that, you're gonna get hit. So you just kind of gotta wait a little bit and kind of take turns trading blows. Not a especially fun fight
no,
in
uh,
pretty much any phase
yeah,
for
I
me.
think he just needs like one big change, or I think Gravios will come back in the next game, and like, I mean, has the exact same problems, and they'll probably
Yeah.
maybe bring back Black Gravios too, but I think both of them just need like a variant or some subspecies to make them just a little bit different and change up their moveset a tiny bit.
Yeah. Because compared to a monster like Uragon, the fight's more dynamic. You
Yeah,
can move around with them a bit more, but
it doesn't feel just like a big mountain that sometimes moves and happens to clip you with its massive hitbox.
yeah.
Um, it is an actual fun fight. So I'd put this one in D.
Yep.
Probably right
Straight.
there. What I'm thinking. Basil.
Basil's a classic. I, you just kind of get to see high numbers on the hit zones. He does his classic raining down bomb stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing special about the fight, really. I think base Basil is like fine.
Yeah,
We'll get
base
to
Basil
seething
really
later, but
doesn't feel changed at all. I think it
no.
was a lot better in World for base Basil, but the fact that they brought back seething obviously helps a lot.
Mhm.
Um,
I think one thing that makes him feel less impactful in this game is that when he comes to quote unquote invade your fight with a different monster, that's usually a help because then he knocks it into Wyvern riding status or the other one starts a turf war with it. So it didn't feel as scary as when you start hearing the theme in Monster Hunter World.
yeah, definitely true. And then obviously, if that happens, and then the Y variety status, they just go away right after anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So I'd say honestly, I think maybe even getting into C tier for base battle,
Right.
but I'd put seething probably an A. Like
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
it's the monster to grind. It just gives you those satisfying high numbers. I think it looks visually again just really good with all that pink,
Hmm.
and I'd probably put it over Almadron in A.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
very big differential between these two, I think, but for good reason. Let's get you out of there.
Seething is the only reason I willingly got to level 300 for anomaly
Yeah,
investigations.
exactly.
Without it, I don't think any fight would have gone as fast for as much like research points.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, by far, in a way, the easiest one to just grind up without doing
Hmm.
like those huge multi monster quests, which are quite annoying.
Yeah.
Another new monster, I think they did a fantastic job with this one.
Yeah. A lot of character in its move set. I like that this one is like one of those goofier monsters, kind of like the Kongolalas,
Yeah,
just
exactly.
jumping around. Like it's funny when you get hit by some of these attacks.
Yeah, and all the fruit on the ground that you can instantly either use or throw back at it. Really
Hmm.
fun way to kind of engage that and use the quick pickups and everything with that. And then Blood Orange, I think, was just a straight kind of upgrade. A couple new
Hmm.
moves, all those explosive pine cones,
Yeah.
incredibly annoying,
Yeah.
but
It throws
still
them in
super
good
fun.
patterns to catch you out.
Yeah, definitely feel like with all these unique monsters that they threw in this one definitely still stands out very well for being a low level monster.
Yeah.
And I think just a super good job they did here.
Hmm.
I think
I
I'd put
like
them.
that. Yeah, you go.
I think Blood Orange could hit A, and Bashan right at the cusp of A, but still probably in B for me.
Yeah, I think so. I just like that when they're jumping on the tail and you get a nice down on by like hitting the tail a lot. The big spin out they do and fling all their fruit out.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
very funny. And luckily no fart mechanic or anything that is incredibly
Right.
annoying like Kangalala. So Chameleos, I know a lot of people were pretty excited to see Chameleos
Hmm.
again. Um, I think it was good, but I mean, out of all the other Elder Dragons, I think it's just hard to compete, to be honest.
I think with Chameleos, it feels like what you're doing to Chameleos doesn't really affect it that much. It just kind of it's looking this way, it shoots this way. It looks this way, it shoots this way. It doesn't really feel like a give and take in the fight. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, it does have all those super targeted attacks, or it just does like a big wide sweep or the big like tongue flick.
Hmm.
And I would agree, it just doesn't feel as smooth. And I think maybe I think that's definitely intentional to make it feel like a
Yeah,
bit more awkward because he is kind of just that quirky Elder Dragon.
right.
But I think he was improved upon a decent amount within the Risen
Yes,
form.
I'd agree.
I
Yep.
think that was a lot more fun. Had a lot more of those chaotic, like there's poison everywhere raining down and
Hmm.
incredibly difficult to avoid. And obviously
Yeah.
the noxious poisons also super annoying. But for just base Chameleos, I don't think it was perfect for me.
No.
Probably put him right at the end of B, right around Barrioth, probably.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And then may as well just do Risen. I think Risen
Yeah.
would just go at the top of nearer to the top of B. I'm thinking more around the
Yeah.
apexes because I think
I
it was a
think
good
it's my
improvement.
yeah, I think it of the three Elder Dragons, he is the one I would choose to fight out of the three, but that's just because I he has big weak zones. The whole tail and the whole head for Pierce Gunner.
Yeah, and I know for me, like as dual blades, it's a lot harder because they are so small as well. Like it's harder to both get up to the head and then hit
Hmm.
that right on the tip of the nose, or at
Yeah.
the tail is the super annoying one. It's like you never feel like you're getting the exact sweet spot, and it's a little harder
Hmm.
to tell with than other tails just because it has that loop and it's just a bit weirder. But I put them right there.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Now, chaotic
This would
gore.
be
We should
chaotic.
talk about probably base gore first. Um,
Yeah, I'd agree.
obviously, very excited for Gore to come back, and for good
Hmm.
reason. incredibly fun. I think they didn't change much, and they really didn't need to,
Yeah.
just because
Good
it's such
spectacle
a
to
good
the fight.
monster. Yeah,
hmm Love the visual effects pretty much the whole way through.
I think it also helped that obviously Bloodlust was just kind of, I think, meta kind of through and through, um,
hmm
and hard not to just get a value point in it and use it throughout the game.
Yeah.
But the fight itself, I think, visually really got improved upon, um,
hmm
and just that dark theme works really well in the game, and you still get that kind of same intense fear when he powers up, and it's like, oh, or you're really close to breaking um, into Bloodlust, and you just don't
Right.
quite get there, and then it kind of feels crappy for the rest of the fight. But
Yeah.
obviously, the way
It
it's
gives a
intended,
good pace to the fight overall.
exactly.
It's like, oh, he's powered up. I really gotta make sure I'm focusing on the head right now, or I gotta be constantly on him so I get over the bloodlust. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like the pacing of all the gore fights, really.
I do think Chaotic fell off just a little bit for me because they put
Okay.
Shagaru in the game. I think it got just
hmm
overshadowed a little bit. Like base score, I think is just there for the timeless classic and is always going to be top tier. But chaotic, I just don't think it's not as memorable because they put Shagaru and then Risen Shagaru into the game. It's just
hmm
didn't feel as impactful when they kind of included all of them.
Right. And I don't know that there's much of a way around that because what did Chaotic do that either one didn't do by themselves? It's just this thing has more moves available to it,
Exactly.
but you've kind of seen them all at that point.
Yeah. And besides just obviously the visual difference, just
hmm
didn't, I don't know, didn't stand out enough for me. I'd definitely put base gore in A. I
hmm
think chaotic gore probably goes into B for me. Maybe you have a different opinion, but that's where I'd put it.
I'd say on the high end of B. I really like the weapons. I think the dual negative and positive affinity effect is really cool and interesting. It
That is true.
makes it very easy to hit high affinity if you're able to overcome bloodlust,
Yeah.
which playing Pierce Gun is it's like one clip and then you're done with it. So
And they really helped the players out in this game because they put a lot of affinity boosters in there, um, especially with just the cat power ups
right,
and
that
other
too.
just affinity boosters. But we'll wait on Shagru's, but I think that's a good
Yeah.
placement for the Gores. Now Valstrak's coming back.
Crimson Glow
It
Valstrax.
just feels like they're taking all the best monsters from other games and just slapping them
Right.
all into one, which
And I
I don't
think
mind.
this one I think they did about as perfect a job as they could have with Crimson Glow.
I think so.
For me, it's the first S.
I would have to agree. You know, I remember the trailer coming out for it, and I was just like, well, that's Valstrax. And I was just like, base Valstrax, but Crimson Glow made it just a little bit different and incredibly difficult. Took me
hmm
a long time, I think, to actually solo this one. I
hmm
think it went a lot better when like we were hunting together and obviously could split kind of who it was focused. But when it focuses on you, like it just feels like you kind of have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Even with the wire bugs and all the movement they gave you, they just made it that much harder to compensate.
Yeah. They
And I
definitely
think
gave it the tools to keep up with you.
exactly. I think it was incredibly difficult, but super satisfying when
hmm
you finally got the break and toppled it, and just an incredible fight overall. I don't think there's really any way they could mess this one up.
Yeah.
Will always be a good one.
Do you want to immediately talk about Risen?
I think so. Yeah, I think we should.
I still like it. It's hard. You feel there's not many moves that you really feel like I don't know what I could have done to not get punished there, but it does have really big moves that will call you out for any bit of misspacing or being in the wrong position.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously the one that stands out to me is just the huge wind up into the wing spin that goes like
hmm
2 or 3 times, maybe even more
Right.
than that. And it's just they do that with a lot of attacks in this game where it's a super long wind up, and then you kind of doubt yourself that you're going to counter
Yeah.
too early or something like that. Just get out of the way. And I think that is the most pronounced move that I remember. But
Hmm.
definitely think that it was just basically, oh, let's make everything more powerful.
Right.
And that obviously that made it harder and it made it satisfying, but I don't think it quite hit that level of, oh, it's just the perfect balance of everything.
Right. I do enjoy base Valstrax more than Risen,
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
but
Um,
I do like the challenge.
I think it would
Love
be
the
right at the end of A probably for me.
mhm. I love the sound design in both fights, especially like those big moves. You really hear it revving up, and you know something's coming your way.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people did like the upgraded ambush as well. And I think it was
Mhm.
cool, but I think I
It
was just
still
too
is
used
just
to the
like,
ambush timing at that point, and it wasn't like
yeah,
that huge of a change where it's like
it's
kind
still
of
one
like
dive.
fake coming down. I think may have been a better choice. Like, oh, it you think it's going to come down, but then there's like another delay in that. I think that
Yeah,
might have been a little cooler than just adding more kind of particles and effects on the ground.
yeah, I'd agree.
I think we should group both the crabs together
Yeah,
as they
I'd agree.
deserve. I think they're right about at the same level. Obviously, just kind of huge meat sticks. I don't think
Yeah,
either is too difficult, but Daimyo being the first monster in Sunbreak, I think was a great choice.
yeah. I love that they give these monsters some time to shine. Different, I don't know, what do you call them? Monster skeletons. The crabs, I forget their actual name in this game, but they're always fun. They're just kind of goofy.
Yeah, I think the weapons and armor look great as always. I know the Palico armor for Daimyo was the
Oh,
one I
it's so
used
good.
almost throughout the
It's so
entire
good.
Sunbreak. It's just fantastic. Um, but definitely huge classics. Obviously, Sianatar being just like the thunder speed run for dual blades, so satisfying
Hmm.
because every time you use your wire bugs spiral slash, it just goes down again and again, and you just
Right,
stun lock it for 1 minute and you're done with the fight. And some people might not find that enjoyable, but it is incredibly satisfying to do.
right.
Um,
This, and that's where I have like a little worse opinion. I usually switch off of gunning for these two because there's not really a good line for Pierce. You can play
that's true.
spread pretty well,
Yep.
but I'd rather just get in that thing's face
Yeah, I
with
was
any
gonna
of the Blade Master
definitely.
weapons.
I think more geared towards the melee fights on this one,
Hmm.
but I'd put them both in A. I think it's
Yeah,
always good to see these come back. Um, always super
not
fun to fight.
especially difficult, but they're fun fights.
Yeah, for sure. Base Diablos.
I like Base Diablos, but maybe that's just because he was the other half of my anomaly investigation grinding. He's got pretty pronounced weak zones for gunning. Um, I think he's a fine mid-game monster. He's like Baroth, just a little step up. He runs straight forward. Sometimes he throws a rock your way with his tail. There's nothing special going on.
Yeah, I don't think he really stood out for me. I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like they made him a little bit bigger in this game, um, which was a little more annoying, or at least I remember him being bigger at the times where I didn't want him to be, because again, with dual blades, it's just harder to get up there unless you're
Right?
using aerial. Um, yeah, I'd have to agree. I don't think it's as good as Baroth. I'd probably put it in C tier. I don't think it stood out, but it's still
Yeah.
a very solid kind of test mid game to see how you're doing.
Hmm.
And I don't think there's too much that can go wrong. But unless they
Yeah.
bring Bloodbath back and in a big way, and I hope they do, I mean, I don't think just regular Diablo stands out too much.
Yeah.
Put
No
him,
extra credit. Just he's doing
yeah,
fine.
we'll put him right next to his friend.
Espinas.
Another big change, yeah. And someday we'll have to play Frontier.
For sure. Because if this is what they had to convert him away from, I've seen some footage of what he actually looked like in Frontier. I'm very excited because I really enjoyed the fights, what they did with them in Sunbreak.
Yeah, I think they did a fantastic job. Like just the thought of like, oh, going into the fight with the monster, you walk up to him for the first time and just sitting there asleep.
Hmm.
Super fun to just like obviously whack on him and do no damage because again, it's just like that thick skin and you really do nothing until he is enraged.
Hmm.
But super fun and the perfect balance of annoying. I think it really does
Yeah.
piss you off when you get hit and paralyzed and poisoned.
Yeah.
It's just super annoying to
Just
deal
seeing
with.
your whole status bar light up.
Exactly. It really makes you think about, oh, I actually have to dodge these or else I will be
Hmm.
punished in a very hard way.
I like this is like that step up that Diablos is missing. It does run just straight at you a couple times, but then it throws in a fireball. It does like a little something extra to keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
And
And I think flaming was a pretty good step up. Um,
yeah,
like the funniest move where he's getting ready for the big attack, but then is just
right.
waddling towards you. Oh,
Hmm.
is super funny.
And it was funny that first week he came out, just how many quests would just be done the second he started that move because somebody didn't just get ready to Superman dive out of the
Yeah,
way.
and I remember it was so. This is like my favorite place to use the dual blades counter because it's like it's such a powerful move, but it's so easy to counter because the tell's there,
Right.
and it just feels like you shouldn't be able to do it, but it's incredibly satisfying. But if you do mess it up, yeah, I remember having to solo this just because I prefer playing in the multiplayer lobbies, but people just kept dying and just couldn't adjust to the move.
Right.
I think these
But no,
both probably. I don't know. Honestly, I think flaming might get just into the end of A for me, but normal's probably at the top of B.
really. Okay. I rate them higher myself. I really
Interesting.
enjoyed the sound design, all the weapons and armor that come with them, and obviously the inclusion of any frontier monster was really cool to see.
Yeah, I definitely
But
think they've opened up a can of worms for themselves, and I think they know that. Um,
mhm,
but I think it's a good thing that they did and just didn't keep ignoring it for years and years to come.
yeah,
Um,
and I think Sunbreak Rise with the wire bugs was a good testing ground for that kind of transition because it looks like in Frontier you have to have as much crazy stuff as the monsters do to survive. And I don't think they would have fit as well in the world environment.
yeah, definitely would agree with that. You know what? I'll give it to you. I'll put them. We'll put them both in A. Now we can do the Rajings together as well.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
regular. Furious.
Use second row, fourth on the
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I think I think Furious was a step up again. Um,
Hmm.
I don't think again just because these were in World, I think they didn't fit this game as well, but were still good inclusions.
Right.
I do really like the dash that Furious does just straight
Hmm.
across twice. Um, I just really like that move. I think visually it looks incredibly cool and it's just very fast. And if you're not ready for it, or like you're doing one of the double Rajang fights, it just comes out of you from nowhere.
Have you done the Double Furious quest they
Yes.
just
Yep.
added?
Yep.
Okay. Because that, I don't know, that soured my opinion of Furious just enough.
Yeah. I mean, if you
But
don't use
the,
the gate there, you're kind of just
right.
like you can get yourself into a corner and stun locked incredibly easily.
They just keep coming at you. But no, I really enjoyed these versions of Rajangs. Didn't feel like they added or took away anything, but they're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd put
Right.
both of them in B probably.
Yeah.
Um,
They're not as annoying as they sometimes have been in the past.
yeah, I think very good classics. Um, I'm gonna put them right at the end. I think here.
I do
Um,
enjoy, if you remember the base game event quest with like the Street Fighter crossover,
oh
where
yeah,
there was
yep.
the Mega Monkey on the mountain. That was a fun one.
Yeah, I think it's always good, and Rajang will keep coming back again and again. I'm sure. And it
Hmm.
will always be a fun inclusion, but I think it's more there just to give like newer players a hard time. To be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of have to fight so many Rajangs to get what a Rajang does.
Yeah. Now we're coming up to Guys Magorm here before even I think touching on any of the three lords, which doesn't feel exactly right, but we'll do it anyway.
Okay.
Um, super
Phasmagorm.
fun reveal
Hmm.
um,
Yep.
on the ship like that massive crater, just like it like climbing out from hell essentially.
Right.
Um, incredibly fun reveal. I think the fight itself. I don't think it's the best like
No.
final monster that there's ever been.
Right. I really liked the visuals of it, just all the scene changes. I, I think it fit the themes of the game very well, but parts of the fight felt very lacking. It just kind of waddling around that big arena. You get your hits in a little bit. It jumps on the wall. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, I actually liked the
Something
wall
missing.
part just for the visual. I think
Yeah.
I think the like ultimate attack there could have been a little bit different. It was just kind of, oh, you walk away and you're not going to
Yeah.
get hit. But I think the first phase is really good. I do like the mechanic of, oh, knock all the bits off and it like damages him. Um,
Right.
I think I think more mechanics like that throughout the fight would have been a little bit better. But I agree, the visuals are fantastic, especially at the end where it's just like all glowing, like all on fire,
Hmm.
and he's just like stomping around. I remember that wiping parties like every single time when it came out,
Right.
and it's just like people didn't like. It's almost impossible to avoid because there are those orbs everywhere that blow up, and he's just like stomping around and locking on you.
Hmm. But what I'd say as a detractor from it, it's a fight I've never gone back to. I never felt like, oh, I need to go relive that guy's McGorm fight again. Once I kind of got the armor and the weapons I wanted, I hadn't really touched it.
Yeah, I only went back when I needed to get the banner for fighting him 10 times. I hadn't even fought him 10
Yep.
times before I had done everything else in the game that I wanted to. So would definitely agree. And it did feel maybe a little bit like Safi Jiva, where it's just, oh, you're moving down. And I mean, I get it because then they do the climbing back up, but, and he's like trying to escape and
Hmm.
you're like preventing that. But I don't know. I think it just fell off a little bit. It didn't give that huge wow factor or huge uniqueness like maybe Atul Ka.
Or like Nikarkos.
Yeah, that like just was like ultra crazy insane. Like you'd never think of it.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, definitely can't put him any lower than B. I would say.
Yeah.
Still, obviously, a final fight. Fun to not know what the monster is before you fight it.
Yeah.
Always
As a
fun to be a new
good one to
experience.
keep not spoiled for.
Exactly. Um, but I don't think I would put it any higher.
Right.
Now, first of the three
Aaron
lords,
Golem.
probably my second favorite.
Yeah, of the three.
Yeah. Um,
I think it's a fun fight.
I think
There,
it's a super fun fight.
I like the different effects he gains when he powers up his arms, jumping around, flopping around, and maybe one of the best animations if you manage to knock him out of that state while in midair
Yeah.
and just seeing him belly flop.
Yeah. I actually, one of my favorite parts about him is his roar. Like he'll put both fists in the ground and then roar.
Hmm.
I think that just like looks super cool. My only complaint, and I knew like brought this up a lot when we first fought him, was that I feel like he just needs to be a little bit bigger. I feel
Right.
like they made
He
him pretty small. Like honestly,
felt
like
kind of underwhelming. I was thinking of this like hulking Goliath, and it's
exactly.
just
Like
he's
in the trailer, I
decent,
felt
but
like it was a lot like more of a presence, like huge
mhm.
monster. And then I
I
was
was
like,
thinking
oh,
like Gammoth size.
exactly. Um, so like maybe I thought it might be a fun event quest at some point. I know they did have one with him as a large crown, but still just not like big enough for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think super unique. Definitely fit into the story of the three lords and everything. Was definitely very fun, and I like was excited to fight him. And I think
Yeah.
it lived up to potential. Um, I think I'd put him
Yeah.
probably right at the end of A.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
He's one that when I was doing the anomaly grind, I did take a break and just fight him for a bit just to have some fun.
yeah,
Really enjoyed it.
definitely something I would come back to in the future, just to kind of remember and mess around.
Want to talk about both metal rats together?
Yeah, yeah. Let's.
Because to me, gold and silver do not feel that different.
No, they really don't.
Silver does a little more flying, which is typical for Rathalos versus Rathian, but I think these versions of the Metal Wraths were better than I remember them in past games. They didn't feel as unhittable for a long time. And then when they supercharge the like fire in their throat, obviously you get big damage that way, but not that crazy in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I don't think I don't think the metal rats really ever stand out to me besides the visuals. I think
Hmm.
silver almost always has the edge for me. Um, Even though I do like Rathian base just a little bit more.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would say it just kind of felt like a pain to fight him every single time. I was never like super excited to see another event quest with him in it.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd
Bit more of a
I'd
pain in
say
the
they were a
ass.
little generous with the hit zones. It felt like as a gunner right off the rip with like Gold Rathian, I believe it's her legs are still like enough to get yellow numbers and proc wax. So it felt like a little too easy to pile good damage on them when you think going into the fight, these are the super armored versions. It's going to be hard to really take them down.
Yeah, I remember one of the best parts for me was always the wings, but it was just again hard getting up there, and it did
Yeah.
they did have a decent enough like unhittable feeling until they really did power up, and I think they accomplished that. But with there was nothing that changed like in terms of oh they have all these incredible moves and you have to like use wire bugs as you do with some of the other monsters. It just didn't feel like um, they fit this game as well.
Hmm.
Honestly, I would probably put them both in C tier. I don't think
Yeah.
either really stood out too much.
I don't think they really added too much to the game
Yeah,
compared to some other later editions.
I will put silver above gold.
Yeah,
Now, one of people's favorite monsters of the entire game, I think.
I think that's fair. Goss, Goss is fun. I like the ice weapons it makes. I like the big damage you can put back on him when he goes into that state. Um, I had a lot more difficult at time with him in base game. I didn't think the changes they made in Master Rank were that extreme, so he kind of fell off for me.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that he shined in base game for sure. Um, I felt like it's hard to make like a new super unique ice monster, but I think they did a great job.
Oh yeah, love all of his visuals. The gr blue to red transition when he gets angry. I think he was one of my favorite, just like as a monster additions. He's up there.
Yeah, and the hit effects while you're hitting his blades when he's
Hmm.
enraged, super satisfying with like the dual blade spiral slash because it's just it like is 8 or 9 clicks right in a row. And another, I mean, he ranks up instantly just because of the dual blades, obviously that they put in the game with the DLC. Uh, and just like having Goss on your dual blades, super fun. And then
The
having that
the plush
exact
ones.
same going into demon mode and having them be red,
Yeah.
super fun. So I think it was like a perfect one-off monster for this game. I think I'd be
Mm.
surprised if they brought him back immediately. I don't think he'd fit as
Yeah.
well in others, but I think he
He
fit
really fits the
perfectly
theme
here.
well here.
Yeah, exactly. I'd probably put him honestly above the crabs in A. I'd put him above Blood Orange in A for sure.
I really like him. Yeah. I think they did a great job with every bit of him. One of the ones, even from the first trailer, I was like, this is going to be a fun monster.
I'm gonna move Blood Orange to the end of A. I don't know if he deserves to be above the crabs or Espinas or anything like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
All right, getting into
All the
all the
greats.
greats right at the beginning of the game.
I
Um,
don't think there's a whole lot to talk about with them. Between Baggy and Roggy, it didn't feel like they learned anything new for this game. So
Yeah,
Once you fight them once, you fought them a million times.
yeah. I really wish they did something more like Great Macaw, where it has the big kick on its hind legs or stuff like that to make some of these a little bit better. I remember when the anomaly quest first started and like you were doing all the greats again, it was just, oh, they're constantly on the ground and you're just hitting them.
Yeah, they just have a ton more health,
Yeah.
so it just takes longer because of that. Um, so I think definitely for Baggy and Roggy, easy D tier. Izuchi as the new starter monster. How do you think it compares to past games versions like Macau, like
Oh,
Big
I think
Jaggy?
it's the worst of the three. I'll be honest.
Wow.
I think it's
Okay.
by far the worst of the three. I don't think it was anything. It doesn't feel as cool as like a great Jaggy who gets balloons up all big. It's just kind of another great, and it relies too much, I think, on the small Azuchi to be with it. Um,
And I think the small Izuchi feel way less impactful in this one.
they definitely
I
do.
think in general, like the mini monsters, even the Bullfango, they didn't really upset me during many fights. They're just kind of there. Your attacks usually have enough area of effect to kind of take them out while you're focusing on the main monster.
Yeah, there's a lot more explosions or elementals or um, like wall wyvern riding, the
Yeah.
bugs on the wall. Don't even recall
So
what they're called. But
I don't know. As a first fight, usually you think of these pack leaders, you kind of got to take out the minions, then
yeah,
you can take out the big one. Never felt that for a moment with Izuchi.
no, absolutely not. I don't think any of these three super lived up to what they could have been. I did like the Ragi armor and weapons.
Yep. Hmm.
But besides that, I think I'd put that the best out of the three, but I think they should all go in D tier. I don't think
Yeah.
they stood out at all for me in this one.
Yeah. Even as a Try fanboy, I can't say back he's that great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're back to what I
Jura.
think is going to be another D tier almost instantly.
I
Um,
will say he's not as bad as he has been. I enjoyed this one enough compared to World, but it's still kind of the same. It runs away from you, it digs around in the mud until you get the really good flop out of the water. You're chasing it down.
yeah, I'll say I think this one was just as bad as it was in World. I honestly
Mhm.
don't think they improved it much at all.
I think maybe what I'm thinking of is that now you have wire bugs to gap close better.
It's true.
That and maybe that's the difference it needed for at least some positive thinking in my mind.
Yeah, and I mean I definitely could have done better. I could have brought more sonic bombs or something. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think it was hard to make this a fun fight. Um,
And I don't think you'd have to be a weirdo to think it's a fun fight for in my mind.
yeah,
I feel like there is a purpose for these kind of monsters to try to annoy you and get you off your game. And it kind of does that well, but I still don't enjoy it.
yeah, I was gonna say I think they did a lot better, like going to more kind of Somnicanth type monsters to kind of hopefully phase out more of these fish. But they really
Yeah.
do need to make probably a bigger change. Um, I think the biggest change that would maybe make these fun again is if underwater combat comes back. I'll be honest. I think
Yeah.
that might be the only way that they could give it like a move set fun enough to really
Mm.
improve the fight.
Because it's just awkward as it is right now.
Yeah. Um, I think it's better than the greats, but past that, I don't think it's better than anything.
Yep. I totally agree.
Kezu coming back.
Kezu in this one, let's think. I think they did a pretty good job with Kezu.
I also think they did a pretty good job. What I would have loved to see, they did a lot of subspecies and a lot of other variants. I would have loved to see red Kezu.
Right. Hmm.
Um, honestly, a little surprised they didn't put it in, but super fun fight. Obviously, I don't think they can change too much with this one.
Right. And but the stuff it does, I think, still can catch you out if you're being a little too lax with it. Because it has that really big hit zone on its head. You really want to go in there to do your damage, but you can tell when you need to step back for a bit.
Yeah. Um, and with that, I think this was like good prep for Astalos, almost
Hmm.
like when he puts his tail on the ground and does the shock. It's just like, oh, you know when not to approach, and then you have your
Hmm.
bigger openings. Um,
Yeah.
but still satisfying. Has a lot of good hitboxes. So um, I'd put this right probably in the mid of B. I think always a fun fight
Yeah.
in silence, of course. Probably put them right about there. I
Not
think.
terribly difficult, but can catch you out there.
Yeah. Uh, Kulu is honestly another one. I'm surprised made it into this one
Yeah.
with it being such a staple in world.
I don't think it did the job better than any other monster in this roster. I To me it's just like that half a step up from the greats, but they didn't really change anything from world and just kind of lackluster.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, nothing will change. I think about them.
Hmm.
This one goes right next to the greats for me. I don't think
Yeah.
in world it was just kind of fun because he's that quirky bird, but bringing him back right in the next game immediately after just didn't add any wow factor. They didn't change anything, um, and only is a little bit like annoying when he brings a rock out or something like that.
Yeah. And there wasn't any fun event quest like in world with the Final Fantasy
Yeah,
crossover.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. Pretty easy D, I think, on that one.
Mhm.
Uh, Going to Kushala,
New Kushala
I
revamped.
love the new Kushala.
Yes, I totally agree.
Exact same as like my burial situation. Hated like least favorite Elder Dragon, as I think probably a lot of people had him as. I think massive improvement. I think it's really
Yep.
fun.
I think they toned down the wind enough for most of the fight that you feel like you can still get in there. Um, there's only a couple times that it really starts putting up the wind walls to try to sneak around and catch you from outside of them. But I think it's a lot more interactive now. It seemed like in the past, Kushala was kind of running away, setting up wind to just like make you be in that like wind animation for most of the fight.
Yeah, I think the flow of the fight is a lot more intuitive. I would definitely agree that the wind is a lot less of a factor. The only annoying times that I remember it being is right after the roar. It like does a second knockback, which gives him
Yeah.
very little time if he immediately attacks. But overall, yeah, I really like the move set with the tornadoes in this one. They just feel a lot more manageable, but still at the same time just as intimidating. And they're not
Hmm.
like permanent sources of oh you just can't go here anymore.
Yep. I, is the Dragon Pounce move, was that a new addition to this one?
I think
Because
it was.
it feels like a pretty good part of his move set.
I was gonna say I think it is, and I would definitely agree. I think that is a fun move. Obviously, the Risen, again, it just does the double copy where it just does it
Yep.
twice, and I
But you
think
get a
that's
pretty
fine.
good opening right after.
Exactly, um, and I think Risen overall does a good job. It's just more tornadoes. It's not more wind in any regard.
Yeah.
It's just kind of more powerful attacks, and you have to be more careful. But I think base honestly edges it out just because of how well they improved it.
Yep. I'd agree.
Um, I don't think it's honestly into A tier, but I'd put it probably above like Chameleos
Yep.
and probably Bashaten in B.
Yeah. Love what they did with it in this one.
Yeah,
And always been a big fan of Kushala's armors.
yeah, that's
So
true.
all that set, very cool stuff.
The Kushala Blessing must have, must have.
Must have.
Lagambi. I've always really liked Lagambi. Um, I think another early tier monster that did fit well into the game. I would have liked to see. You know, I'm gonna take it back. I think they did improve it. I think they did give it. It's felt like a monster that has always been able to outmaneuver you, but on this game it
Mm,
feels like you're on even footing.
right. I think the addition of wire bugs makes it a better fight for me. Because in the past, it felt like when it would just sprint away, fling a snowball back at you, you'd run all the way to it, then it'd do like the spin out
Yeah.
move, and you got to go run to it. Feels like you can stay on it a lot better in this one.
Yeah, I think it's almost perfectly balanced, and I just remember it jumping the Kitnator, perfect timing, just knocking it down. So I think
Yeah.
just super satisfying, and I think it fits well with all the mechanics they put in the game. Um,
Yep.
and you're right, is not just like running after it for half the hunt, kind of wasting your time instead. So I think a much
Yeah.
needed improvement. Um, that being said, obviously it's still fairly easy fight. I don't think it was any
Yep.
everything to be concerned about, but still
I'd
very
put
fun.
it in C right between Akmasom and Arzuros. I like that in this one, it feels like a better teacher of the mechanics of wire bugs than like Arzuros and other early game monsters.
Yeah, would definitely agree with that. Now, let's talk about Nargacuga first,
Hmm.
um, because of
Did it
how iconic
surprise you
Lucent
that
is.
Nargacuga is like one of the most hunted monsters?
I mean, it's how many games does it not in? I guess
Oh man, it feels like every single one.
because I was gonna say
'Cause-
there are definitely a couple where it might be excluded, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. I guess it's not
but
in try, or is it?
no, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Um, man, again, obviously super annoying until you really learn its moveset,
Hmm.
which is almost the entire point of the monster. Um,
And back in base game, when I guess maybe this is where a lot of the hunts came from, when Nargacuga weapons were like the only ones to reach, what is it, blue or white?
yeah,
And base rise, maybe that's where all the hunts came from. So this is what you were doing for a lot of base rise.
yeah. That being said, I just don't remember it standing out that much.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of that mid tier fight where fight it maybe a couple times, get a weapon, get some armor, and then just kind of
Hmm.
move on. I don't think it's
Yeah.
ever at that spot where it's like, oh, I'm gonna get the full set and everything, or really something you need to focus on.
Right. And it is one of the first fights that you feel like the pace of the fight has increased. It's really trying to come out and get you, but the openings are there. A really satisfying tail break too, with a little additional mechanic of
Yeah,
like it has to be enraged. I like that as a mind distraction during the fight.
yeah, I would agree with that. I would put this just maybe slightly above. Actually, I would put it right after the Metal Wraths in C.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah. I think
Um,
base Nargacuga, a fine inclusion. I think it has a place in pretty much any Monster Hunter game, but they didn't change too much about it, which what are you going to change at this point with it?
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
That being said, Lucent coming back
Is
in
everything you should
is
change about
everything you should change.
Nargacuga.
Yep. I think is the perfect addition.
Hmm.
Super excited. I think I remember the feedback being super positive about Lucent coming back. I think
Yeah.
everybody was super excited, and Forlorn Arena um,
Yeah.
was like the perfect fit. I think they threw too much stuff in the Forlorn Arena afterwards, but besides that, I think the Lucent was just the perfect addition. Um, incredibly difficult when you have all those wire bugs and maneuverability
Hmm.
tactics available to you, but then you just don't know where it is. Um,
Yeah.
and it
Super cool visuals throughout the fight.
yeah, it just catches you off guard super easily. Uh, the double tail slap with the poison barbs coming out.
Right.
A lot more spins. I think it used a lot. It
Hmm.
has that same kind of big spin move. Obviously not as wide of a radius as like Valstrax, but
Yep.
still incredibly easy to get hit by. Um, yeah, I really have no complaints about the fight. I think it's really good.
Yeah. Only positive things to say about Lucent and its fight.
I would say just for them bringing it back. Honestly, I think this breaks into S after
I think so too.
Valstrax.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I remember it took me a while to get a solo on it. It was just the right amount of difficulty for when it was released. I think it was
Hmm.
just perfect.
It didn't feel like when you get carded by it that so it was the game's fault. Like you're like, oh, there was like a little bit of time I had to prepare for what it was going to throw at me next.
Yeah, I think this is one of the first monsters that like made me actually use all my defense buffs, all my attack buffs. Like I was actually
Yep,
consciously thinking about it and making sure that everything was kind of in play.
yep, good end game monster.
Very good end game monster. And I hope they don't bring it back for a while again. I
Yep,
think they just put it away because it really should be kind of that rare variant that they bring in.
yeah, it felt special
Going back to Luna Garen, um, my least
for
favorite
me.
of the three lords, but
Yeah,
I think
easily
still
my least favorite.
I think still a great monster. I definitely wouldn't say that because it's the worst, it falls off at all. I think still a
Mhm.
really fun and unique fight.
Yeah, the different phases of it being on all fours, it standing up. They really incorporated the werewolf lore mentality into the fight very well. Uh, It's just pretty annoying until it gets the ice armor because the only good hit zone is like its snout,
Yeah,
it feels like.
it just feels like a completely evolved Arzuros with the swipes, with the dashes.
Hmm.
Um,
That's a good way to put it.
but I think super fun and with the super unique quest before Guys Magorm right at
Right.
kind of the end there, with it just being the afflicted Lunagarin, super
Hmm.
super fun and unique
One of the most
monster.
memorable quests in the series.
Yeah, for sure. And just because of that, I think I'd put it definitely in A, but probably right at the end there.
Yeah. Can be annoying, but not too difficult.
Yeah,
Good parts to that
and I don't
file.
think it'll come back again. I'd
No.
like to
It,
see him not touch a lot of these monsters because of like how unique and kind of crafted they are to the whole Sunbreak and Rise themes.
yeah,
But still, incredibly fun, and we'll probably come back to it one day.
for sure.
Now, this is what I was alluding to. My least favorite subspecies, I think, maybe not ever, but it's incredibly annoying fight. It
Yeah,
feels like you can't walk anywhere near it when it's
right.
underground, when it leaps up, or when it gets the, I guess, magma ball on its tail.
Hmm.
Assume that's what it's made out of. Just so annoying. And what I actually didn't realize, going back to do crown hunting, smaller than normal Almudron,
Mm,
which actually makes it a little bit harder, a little bit more difficult, in my
yeah,
opinion. I think it's cool visually, but it just doesn't. I feel like it just punishes you a little bit too hard for what feels like should be a pretty average, still mid tier monster.
yeah. I can't remember exactly where it pops up in progression, but it did feel a little tougher than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
I like that when it like goes underground, certain parts of its body heat up, kind of like Basario, so you can get good damage in, but maybe it's just because I'm a gunner and I don't have to be so close. If I had to constantly be on him, I can see the annoyance coming into play.
yeah, would definitely agree. I just don't think this one met expectations as well or improved upon what was already a very good Almudron fight.
Yeah. And
Um,
I don't know where this landed in the string of now the variant is the thing, but it's fire.
yeah,
It felt like that just kept coming back in Sunbreak.
yeah. Besides it having the best dual blades for fire elemental and them look, I will say the magma shredders do look very nice.
Yeah,
I love the circle effect on the dual blades. Um, one of the best pairs and my favorite, but besides that, I don't have many good things to say. I would put this right at the top of D tier. To be honest, I don't. I think it's that it falls off that much for me.
for sure.
Uh, coming to the
This is
flagship.
base. Yep.
Yeah,
Agmall is a super cool addition. I remember when all we had was the demo countless attempts on the first version of Magnum Hollow.
Yeah, it did take us quite a while before we got a clear. Um, Again, I think it's just like the perfect flagship for this game, and obviously
Mhm.
very handcrafted for it.
Yes.
Um, the I guess the only bad thing I have to say about him was the end credits rolled too early. In
Yeah.
progression of the game,
And
like
it felt
as a
like
three
once
star
you got
quest,
to him, he was easier than I really thought he
yeah.
should have been.
And I think it is probably because we played the demo so much and got all
Hmm.
that experience. I think took away just a little bit from when you got there, but I still think a super fun fight. The Hellblight, is that what it is? Is that like
Yeah.
its proper name? With you being able to get the knock using the wire bugs, I think is a super um, intuitive addition and just makes you think about your wire bug usage a little bit more in the fight.
Mhm.
Um, has plenty of hit zones, so you can kind of take the fight any way you want. Um,
Yeah.
Visually, just really nice. His tail, uh, little cyclone fire at you, I think is an incredible move. Really
Hmm.
unique one. But yeah, I
One of the
really have
best
nothing
ones to
bad to
use when
say.
wyvern riding too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a great teacher of the game's mechanics. It does feel like the end of kind of all the stuff you've been learning up to that point. And especially in the demo, it felt like you had to use everything the game could give you to even put a scratch on this thing. But then once you kind of got there in the base game, if you had enough damage, you could just keep busting the lit up parts and it would just get kind of tossed around.
Yeah. Um, I honestly don't think this one breaks into S. Sadly, I think it is right
Hmm.
at the top of A.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think just as flagships go, probably right in the mid rankings, but still really good and just fits Space Rise perfectly.
Yep. And I will call out, I still love that when you get that topple and it does the little like fling its paws at you and just damages you
Yeah,
enough to let you know that it's still trying to fight. I think that's a super cool addition.
yeah, I would agree with that. I honestly forgot about that, but yeah, you're correct.
Hmm.
Um, and moving right into the Sunbreak flagship, this,
Did you want to talk about Scorn first?
actually, yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
Let's talk about scoring. Uh, Took a while to grind to it. They did put it at
Yeah.
a quite a high cap, but they did have some of those other monsters like at 50 and 75, I think, with
Hmm.
Furious, and then what was the other one? I don't remember the other one for progression. But getting all the way to Hunter Rank 100 took a while, but was definitely, I think, worth it.
Yes.
Um, so incredibly intimidating first time fighting it.
Yeah.
It just feels like you always need to be moving. It doesn't really feel like you're given any openings, even though you are, which I
Yeah.
think is a great way to kind of approach the fight.
Just feels like a better Magnum Hollow in almost every phase of the fight. The visuals are amped up, the music's amped up. I really enjoyed what they did with Scorn.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
The
Um,
first time you see it, kind of like charge up the arm blade in the ground before it shoots the beam of stuff at you.
yeah,
Very intimidating.
and just the red effects coming out of the tail and covering like half the area that you're in.
Mhm.
Super. That kind of sticks out in my mind.
Yep.
And then getting all the part breaks you need for certain items as well definitely is something like you have to consciously think about a lot more than in other
Yep.
fights, and you have
I'd
to go
agree.
back and fight them more, which was always I think fun. I was never like, oh man, we have to go back to do Scorned or something.
Hmm. A fun fight, but I always knew a bit of a challenge going into it,
Yeah, I think
which
it
is
was
good.
definitely a very good test of, oh, you got to Hunter rank 100, but here's a monster you still might not be able to beat.
Right.
I would say this breaks into S tier right at the
For
end.
sure. Yep.
And another one where I think this is almost one that they could bring back on its own at
Hmm.
some point. like probably a
Yeah.
few games down the line.
Yep.
I could see it just working a little bit better.
Hmm. They could change its moveset enough to fit a different game engine and style, but
Yeah.
love both Magnum Moms.
Yeah. I think did a really good job. Um, I think they did an even better job with Malzeno. I'll say it. Uh, might be trying to think. Might be my favorite flagship, and I think
Trying to think of one that really does it better than Malzano.
some
Because
people might have Seregios, but that's a lot of nostalgia as well for probably for some people.
yeah,
But I can't think of one that tops it. Maybe Laggy. Besides that, I can't think of a contender for myself.
right. Just the whole setting, the build up to Malzano, the music of the fight. I think it's the complete package.
Yeah, and for him being such a kind of more typical dragon, the move set
Hmm.
is just like it does not feel bog standard. It feels incredibly unique and challenging with whether it's all the orbs of Curio coming at you, where it's him throwing like ripping up the ground beneath you in the straight line that has just an insane range, but felt like a very difficult fight. Also took us a long time to clear in the demo for Sunbreak.
Yes, it did.
But again, made getting to him in the real game a lot easier, a lot more manageable, but still pretty difficult. Um, Definitely would put it in S tier. I think
For
probably
sure.
a you know I would put it at the top right now. I think it was better than Valstrax. I think it was better than Lucent
Hmm.
um, for being a flagship, and just obviously the theme as well.
Yep.
By far and away, best theme of any monster in the game.
I think they did about as perfect a job as they could with Malzano.
Yeah. And we may as well talk about Primordial.
Primordial is a different beast altogether.
Yeah. Pretty high expectations when you put it as the very last monster in the game, but
Hmm.
definitely met those in terms of difficulty, in
Yep.
terms of. I honestly wasn't super excited when I learned that it would just be Primordial at the end of the game because I was just like, oh, it's a monster we already know, but just another variant.
Hmm.
Um, but the changes they made just made it seem like a completely new beast and just by far, I think the most difficult fight in the game as warranted.
Yeah, it feels like a monster that is like intelligently trying to kill you. A lot of its moves cover the spaces that you want to dodge into, and then once it starts enraging, it just keeps on you, which it's still one of the scariest things to be the target of that like 6 or 7 hit string.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I like most about the moveset is there are a lot of moves where intuitively it's just like, oh, I should be running away, but you actually have
Hmm.
to move closer and in a
Yeah.
very certain way to actually dodge it. And that's one of my
Yep.
favorite parts, like when it does that wing kind of burst at the ground towards you, and then it like swipes its wing out and then
Yep.
digs again.
Hmm.
Um, it's just like you have to be moving towards it in the opposite direction to actually dodge it, or else
Yep.
you have to use a counter or something like that. And in this fight, you run out of wire bugs so fast where it's like it doesn't
So
even seem
fast.
that helpful or
Right.
useful, and you have to be on top of your wire bug management. So I think it actually, I didn't think it would end up as good as it did, but I think it was a perfect last monster addition to the game.
Hmm. I don't think it is quite as challenging as like Fatalis was in World, but I think it really makes you use the systems in this game in a really good way.
Yeah.
You're constantly using your wire bugs, thinking about, am I going to have another one up for when it does something else at me? It's a really well made fight.
Yeah. Um, I would put it. It's a tough one for me because I really liked it.
Hmm.
Um, but in terms of, I think I only really liked it because it was just the final most difficult thing.
Yep.
Um, I think I would put it right at the end of this tier. I do think
Yeah.
it deserves to be there. But I think in terms of uniqueness and just um, movesets in general, I think right at the end is probably the right spot.
Yeah. I agree.
Toning it back down quite a bit, back to base Mizutsune, and we can do Violet at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't think base honestly stands out as much. I think in terms
No.
of mid tier monsters, it did a lot better job than, for example, maybe Nargacuga in this game. I think it did still fit very well.
Hmm.
I think they could put Mizutsune into any game and it would fit well. Still feels fun and is just a nice change of pace. But I don't think they really added much to it. Trying to think of anything really new they did, and it was not
Right.
much.
Yeah. It's a fight that it's fine. You do it, you kind of get through it, and it was pretty fun. But I don't go out of my way to hunt a ton of Mizusune.
Yeah, I think I would put it probably right next to Apex. I think I
Yeah,
liked Apex maybe a tiny bit more. Um, but Violet, I, I really did like.
I did too.
I think
They
the
really
upgrade
souped
to
it
its
up,
moveset,
and
yeah, was by far the best part. A lot more bubbles when they're explosive, makes a lot more intimidating, and the homing effect on you was incredibly good. Like the tracking on it was a lot better than I would have expected for some of the
yeah,
tracking they gave to some of the other monsters.
yeah, felt way better than like Soul Seer. You remember any of those fights?
Yeah, and um, do it in the doing it in the springs, I think was a good
Hmm.
choice.
Yep.
I think that area in general, I honestly didn't like as much because there was only the one wall on the one side, which made it feel a little
Right.
bit awkward, and the rest of it was just open space. But besides that, I think it was a good place for a lot of those extra kind of addition title update fights.
Hmm.
But I would put Violet probably near the top of B, maybe right after Guys Megorium.
Yeah, that's where I was looking too.
Yeah,
Good difficulty, but you get your openings pretty good too.
yeah. It was a nice just addition after the base release as a title update. I think just the right amount of fun as just
Hmm.
kind of a one monster edition.
This is All Mother Narwa. I don't know
Correct.
what order you want to talk about. Pretty much Narwa, Ibushi, and then All
Um,
Mother.
we can do all three at the same time. Maybe start with Narwa. Um,
Regular.
yeah, regular Narwa. I think, man, I don't know.
In terms of like a siege weapon kind of fight, it's fine. Like you do have to jump around with your wire bugs a decent amount to get up to the cannons, and the attacks I think are all pretty well telegraphed. It didn't feel like that out of the ordinary, but I don't know. It felt like a weird way to end Base Rise.
it did feel like a weird way, and like the fact that they didn't fully release, um, kind of the end of Base Rise
Hmm.
at game release was again just a little awkward. Really, still not
Yeah.
sure why they did that. But in terms of, I think it was fun to use all the different siege mechanics. Definitely annoying at times because even with one wire bug, still you didn't get there, or you still fell off, something like that,
Yeah.
or like
You
overshot it.
think you're standing right on the right spot for it to
Yep.
pop up, and then it just brushes you off the
Like
side.
sometimes I would hit the edge of the platform and like, oh, I'm gonna clip and grab and hop up, but sometimes you just
Yep.
fell right back down. Kind of annoying in that aspect. But yeah, I just felt a little awkward at times. I think it almost suffered a little bit from like that same kind of Lagambi problem you mentioned earlier, where it sometimes just goes super far away and then
Hmm.
dashes to the opposite side, and you're just kind of chasing it around instead of actually fighting it.
Yeah. But when you do get to fight it, and that sack on its belly is
Yeah,
inflated, It feels really
very
good.
satisfying. Yeah, and then you pop it, get the tail cut. Um, Almost is a little annoying to get to the sack sometimes too,
Yeah.
if you weren't like in a good position when it came down.
Mhm.
Um,
Not my favorite of like an end game, base game monsters, I'd
yeah,
say.
definitely did not feel anywhere close to Geismagorm for like a
Right.
monster where you weren't spoiled and were seeing for the first time.
Yeah.
I would say honestly, right at the top of C. I don't think
Yeah.
it even gets into B tier for me. Um, and Ibushi, I honestly like more, even though they didn't give it that like separate fight besides within
Yeah.
the Rampage quests.
And whatever the start of the All Mother quest is, where you
Yeah,
smack on it for like 2 minutes and then it dips out.
I was gonna say visually, I think it looks better. I think would have been a cooler fight to basically do instead of Narwa and like have the roles reversed.
It would have been
Um,
cool to have like two versions of the All Mother quest to see.
that's you know what? Yeah, I think that would have been awesome. But
But
I think it had the same problem where it just didn't feel like as natural of a fight.
right. And I don't know. I'm trying to think of like what is the best like siege weapon fight Monster Hunter's ever had, and none of them are really that like, wow, I gotta go back to that.
Yeah, I would say Jen is probably
Gen
um,
feels good, yeah,
is probably the best one for me.
just because there's such sheer size of scale. You're really doing all you can to keep your ship alive,
Yeah, and
stuff
it's
like
more of a
that.
stark transition between using the siege weapons and then actually going and smacking the monster yourself.
Yeah,
Whereas they kind of commingle them a lot more, and I think they'll probably continue to do so because I think they have the perception of if you're on like using siege weapons too long, so it kind of just gets boring. You're like loading a cannon for
yeah.
five
Then it
ten
turns into
minutes.
like the Lao Shan Lung fight where all
Exactly.
you do is load a cannon.
So I think they are
Yeah.
trying to balance that out more. But again, I just don't think it was the perfect fit.
Hmm.
And we haven't talked about the Rampage as much, but just a little lackluster in that because all you're
Yeah.
doing is using those. And obviously, there's a good variety of weapons. And I think it was fun for maybe 10 or 15 quests. But
Yeah.
if they had forced it anymore, I don't think it would have worked very well. I'm glad they kind of cut it off after base rise.
Yeah.
I put Ibushi maybe right at the end of C. I think,
Yeah.
um, or actually end of hmm, maybe like mid C. I'm
Just didn't really
thinking,
get any chance to shine.
yeah, I'd probably put it right about there. You know,
Mhm.
actually, it's probably better than the early game monsters. I'll even move it past Nargacuga. I think All Mother was better for
Yes.
sure.
I like that you kind of get a little glimpse of the regular fight. I think the first time doing that quest, when you really don't know what's going on, it was cool. There's a lot of things that caught me off guard in a good way.
Yeah, I think the spinning Dragonators very fun, uh, super unique, and kind of that big ultimate move that it needed, kind of
Hmm.
crashing down into the ground. Um,
Yeah.
I do like the first part where you kind of just shoot Ibushi for a bit. Probably
Right.
not people's favorite part, but I kind of liked that to be honest. It made the siege weapons feel a little bit more impactful, but the fight itself still had this kind of same chase problem. I did like where they bring in the wyvern riding.
Right. I think that
Um,
was a cool story moment.
yeah, introducing that and they kind of reused it a couple times, I think was really nice. And that was the first time you saw it, and just really made you use those new mechanics more, which I think is always a good thing,
Hmm.
and fitting the fight to it. But I think they were
It,
just still a lot better monsters in this game, and
yeah.
it should have been obviously released with base rise. I think if it
Yeah.
had been, it would have been honestly quite a bit better. But because you had to like wait for it, and then it didn't seem all that different, it was just like, why did you like wait to have this come out? So
Right. And I think it falls into the same problem like Geismagorn. I can't remember the last time I did an all mother fight.
yeah, and same thing with
You get the
Geismagorn.
orbs
Last
and
time I did it was to fight 10 of them, and that was it. And then I stopped.
Mhm.
Um, and I was just like, it is not fun enough for me to continue with. So,
Right.
and actually, you know what? I found this out afterward, which was kind of sad. But you don't even need to fight 10 of them because there's not a specific banner for All Mother. I think because
Oh
it
no.
was released after Base Rise.
That's true.
So
That's
all
true.
kind of part of the same problem. But
Yeah.
I would still maybe put it near to the end of B. I think it
Yeah.
was definitely better than Narwa Bushi, but um, I don't think it
This is
deserves
right
much
there
more.
just fine.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
A couple more early game monsters. Puke, I think always fun.
Yeah.
Mostly
He's another
because,
one that I like that they add that goofy element to a
yeah,
monster. I
just the
think
nice hit
Monster Hunter can
zones.
take itself too seriously sometimes, so these kind of monsters rein it in for me.
It's true. Uh, Cutting the tail is always the best part, and then it
Hmm.
having like no great moves afterward.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think definitely a classic. They'll keep bringing it back, I'm sure. But very fun. Yeah, not too much there. I
I'd
think
put it
honestly,
in that C tier with the others. I like it more than the others, but I have no strong opinions on Puke.
I would agree. Yeah. Um,
Spiders.
Another new monster. Yeah, spiders coming back. Not Nursilla. I think Nursilla's
Mm-mm.
better.
Yeah,
Um,
I like the addition. I like the like coordinated moves it has with the little I forget
the
their
little
names. They're not
arachnoids, or
Arachnoids. I was gonna say
I think that
arachnites, and I
might
was
be
like,
it.
that
Yeah,
sounds wrong. Arachnoids. Interesting fight. Definitely got to come at it from a little bit of a different angle, breaking off the silk from its legs, getting the big downs. Then he gets the sack. Good phases to the fight.
yeah, it definitely does progress. Get quite a bit harder. Like getting stuck in the silk. I remember
Hmm.
being super annoying. Obviously, there are ways to avoid that and dodge it. Um, but yeah, had a nice flow to it. I think I can't even remember what's the subspecies. I was gonna say magma
Pyre,
or
Pyrarachna Kadaki.
Pyrarachnicidaki. Yep, that's it. Thank you. The ultimate move there,
Hmm.
incredibly, like you can't really dodge it.
Yeah,
And you kind of have
I
to
like it.
counter it or just run super far away.
Yeah, good visuals for that. I think very fun fights. These are ones that both of them, when I fought them for the first couple times, I felt like I had no handle on the flow of the fight. But once you really start to figure it out, it opens up and gets a lot more fun.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a big potential for them to have just a really like perfected spider in a future
Hmm.
game. I don't think they're quite there yet, but I
Yeah.
still I want to see more of them. I want to see
Yep.
Nursilla come back. I really do like Nursilla, but
Yeah.
I think Pyres still fit the game well, and both Rachnas were a decent progression in terms of where they were placed.
Yep.
I think I
Good
would put
jumps in
them,
difficulty when I met both of them, I'd say.
yeah, I think I'd put them right around Basil probably. I think they did stand out more than some of those other mid tier monsters,
Yeah, for sure.
and I think Pyre was just a tiny bit better.
Yeah, I like the rush down attacks it does when it drops its sack because you kind of get into the standing behind it mentality of when you fight the first one and this one. I think they did a good job of the same kind of stuff's not really going to work as well for you here.
Yeah, and all that movement they gave it with
Hmm.
arachnoids and
Yeah, the
either
idea that
moving
they're
with
kind of
them or
using
attacking with
silk
them.
vines.
Yeah,
I'd always like to see that.
yeah. So overall, I think still really good additions to the game.
Yep.
Base
Rats.
Rathlos Rathian. We've already kind of talked through these. I don't think they're anything special.
Mm.
Have to bring them back
Rathian
for
is
people who want to see
that
them,
first
but
one you really I don't know. You can have some troubles with Rathian, but if you really just stick on the head and get a couple downs, the fight is over.
Yeah.
I I think it's that first early to mid game wall for some people, but it's a good one to overcome.
Yeah, I think people definitely get stuck on kind of the aerial aspects of the fight. I think
Yeah,
these are the first monsters to really present a challenge there. So probably is a wall for some people, but is good at teaching you mechanics like maybe actually start bringing flash bombs to the fight,
antidotes become
antidotes for
important
sure.
very quickly. So
But
I
they,
like
they kind of
Rathian
have
in
to be
this
there.
one. I think I like Rathian in this one more than I like Rathalos, but I think that's probably consistent throughout all the games. I think Rathalos doesn't feel like it's in the air too much, too much. You can still bring it down with some flash bombs, but it can stay up there for a while.
Yeah, honestly, I think I'm a bit of the opposite here. I think I like base Rathalos more, but Apex Rathian better.
Hmm.
But I'd put him probably. I hate to put him not in B tier, but I think they might just reach the end of B tier for me for
Yeah,
being
I
kind of the timeless classics.
timeless classics, but there's nothing new. They don't. They're getting a passing grade.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
Uh, and I think
Yastra and
the last,
Risen.
yeah, last base Elder Dragon here. I can do just base Teostra first.
Hmm. He's never been my favorite of the three Elder Dragons. Like, I don't have strong opinions going into a fight with him. The supernova is pretty well telegraphed in this one. Um, I do kind of like the double snap of him setting up the explosions and then setting them off. I think the particles look good in this game too, but I don't know. Not my favorite personally.
Honestly, I like him probably more. He was my favorite coming in, and I think he did well. I think Kushala might have actually passed him in this one.
I think so too.
I do really like Risen. I think Risen feels fun for a lot of those same reasons. Like the particles just look really nice, and with
Mm,
Teostra, obviously, that's just going to be enhanced a little bit.
yep.
I think they didn't change his moveset too much, but I'm honestly glad about that. I didn't want them to make it much crazier than it is.
Yeah.
And is just kind of that classic Elder Dragon feel, pretty
Hmm.
tough fight coming into base game. So I still really like it, but I think Kushala did have the edge on it in this one.
I agree for sure.
Put it probably right mid, probably. mm, Oh,
Yeah,
it's better
thereabouts.
than that. We'll put it right after Kushala. I think it's still better than a B shot in any day.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
man.
my man, my I don't know if he's
He's good every
still my
time.
favorite monster, but yeah, I think he's the best out of the low tier. He's my favorite low tier monster for sure.
Hmm.
And I think they actually did a lot with his moveset in this game.
Yeah.
They gave him a lot more kind of tail flicks and more wind up moves where he like coils up and then lashes out, kind of like a
Hmm.
snake. The dehydrated sponge, really love it. It just looks really
Yeah.
nice in
Looks
this
really good
game.
in this one. I
Um,
think it's a good one to tell you that like if you stand here on a monster, it's gonna kind of do this kind of attack.
yeah,
It's very reactive to where you are position wise in a good way.
yeah, and I think this is one that it's like more the monsters chasing you in the low
Hmm.
tier, and that feels like it makes it. It's like a nice turn of difficulty in the early game.
Yep.
Obviously, the armor looks fantastic. The hammer still looks just as good as ever.
Hmm. I think it's a really good early game monster.
Yeah, I
Among
think
the
it's
best.
fantastic. If I were to place it, I'd place it in A, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But it being above Geismagorm seems a little wrong, if we're being real here. So
If
I'd
you're talking about the job that it does, I think it does it to an A ability.
all right. It's gonna make it. I love them. I love them.
Hmm.
Hope he comes back. I need to see Purple Ludroth or give him a variant. I don't even care.
Yeah.
But if Purple Ludroth doesn't come back, I honestly hope they kind of bring back underwater combat just so we can see him back underwater. I
Hmm.
think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. You got a good moveset that translates well. You kind of see what he does on land, and then it's not one to one, but you can see the kind of same patterns underwater.
Yeah,
It's a good early one for that.
for sure. Coming back to Steve, good
He
old
felt decent
flagship.
in this one, I think. I feel like in Gen and Generations Ultimate, he kind of flew around a lot. This one, he has those quick moves, but he always comes back to the
I
ground
was gonna
pretty
say
quick.
he dive. I feel like the move he does the most is that dive back to the ground.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it was a really good fight. Definitely a lot easier to overcome the bleeding in this one. We didn't talk about
Yeah,
that with the crab.
didn't ever really feel scared of that part of it because you could crouch and still keep moving around,
Yeah, and it
keep
only
in
took
the
like
fight.
second and a half to get rid of it. Something it was like
Yeah.
really short amount of time. I remember it being a lot longer in past games.
Hmm.
But just for the
I
nostalgia, I think they did a great job bringing him back. I think a lot of
yeah,
people were
I'm
excited.
I'm a little disappointed they transferred his unique weapon skill into an actual armor skill that is not that great. The blade scale hone.
Yeah, that was very lackluster. I mean, it always seems like
Because that
such a
was
cool
like the defining
concept.
feature of it in
Yeah.
those past games. You get those weapons, you're like, I don't need to worry about sharpness ever again. But
Yeah, I think definitely underwhelming in terms of I never was like, "Oh, I want to get the full set and use the weapon
right.
and go for that all out." But the
Hmm.
fight itself is still really good.
Yeah, I agree.
Probably put him right looking at mid B-ish.
Yeah, I think that's fair for him.
I don't know if he goes above the Elder Dragons for me, but definitely above some of those mid-tier monsters.
Hmm. Shigaru.
Shigaru felt good. Uh, I'll bring it up again, but it didn't feel as overwhelming because they had already gotten Gore and Chaotic Gore back. It just felt like they should have done maybe one of the pairs instead of both.
Hmm.
And I get why they did both. Like, I don't know
It's hard to
when
have just one without
exactly,
bringing all of them.
exactly. But I think visually they did very well. Obviously, it looks great in the
Hmm.
game. Moveset's not all that special except for just kind of the one mega roar and then all the beams come down.
Right.
It just kind of feels like the same fight otherwise, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I, just having four very similar fights kind of dilutes the experience of all of them, it seems.
Yeah. I will say the level 300 anomaly risen Shigari that we did, uh,
Hmm.
incredibly challenging, but it did just kind of
Yes.
feel like we were on a loop at one point.
Yeah.
And there wasn't much else to it besides it being just a lot stronger and hitting a lot harder.
Yeah. I guess it's just a little annoying to try to think, well, they all shoot out that like little ball that explodes, but which way does this one's pattern go? Is it horizontal? Is
Yeah.
it diagonal? Is it yeah.
Yeah. I would put these two right at the same level as probably chaotic, just slightly above.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think as it got
They
difficult,
all feel
maybe a little bit more
pretty
fun, but
similar.
yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't
I like
feel
the
super
difficulty
unique.
of Risen Shigaru, but it's one that it sometimes feels like you get caught out by weird attacks. Just all the explosions that don't seem to have set patterns. Hard to really prepare for
Yeah, I
once it
definitely
really gets
agree.
amped up.
And we probably won't see him again for a while, so I'm glad they're in a
Right.
game.
Hmm.
But I think
This is a good
Gore just
revisit
stands out the most.
for sure.
Another new low tier monster.
The
Um,
Pteranodon was an interesting one.
I think it was good. Obviously puffing up like Zamtrios
Love
with
that.
like the nostalgia of some of the other lower tier ones, but I think it was pretty good.
Mhm. A good one for really getting blunt weapons worked out in the early game because you can just knock out
Yeah.
Tetronodon like 4 times in a row. Just very well defined. You hit its belly or the front of it until it falls over. If you're hitting the back, you're doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely a good just kind of introduction to good hit zones in general.
Yeah. It fits this game very well. I don't think it will fit many other games as well.
No, I don't think so. I think a monster like Tetsu Cabra still shines far and above um, something like Tetranodon.
Yeah.
Also, another annoying thing, like the big shiny is just the only worth like Kimura points.
Right. Yeah.
Always
That
annoying when a
one,
monster has something like that.
it felt like I did all this work to get this semi-rare drop, but then what was it for?
Yeah, exactly. I'd put it probably right as we're looking at like Puke and
Yeah.
other of those monsters in C, I would say.
hmm Not as memorable as some of them to me, but I always enjoyed the fights with the Charmadon.
Yeah, still feels
Armor
very
was really
fun.
interesting too. Just big clunky ghillie
That's true.
suits.
Yeah, that did look silly
I
and
like
fun.
those.
Back to Tigrex. Always good.
hmm
I think visually, just a little more refined in this one. Looks nice.
Yep. He does scramble around a lot, but you have the tools to keep on him. I think he kind of benefited just like Lagambi did in past games. It definitely feels like you got to wait for him to settle down, go run to him, and then get a couple chops in. But
Yeah, and like obviously getting the park breaks again and making him stumble a little bit
right.
helps out a lot. Similar to Barrioth. Obviously, feels like they can't change too much with it, but still feels good and kind of as
Mhm.
timeless as it always has been.
I think they sped him up a little bit, and that's about all you can do to fit this style of game.
Yeah,
So
I really honestly thought that Molten might come into Sunbreak. I know it was probably a rumored monster
another
for quite a
fire
few of them.
variant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of glad they didn't. I'm sure we'll see it in the future, but
Yeah.
didn't really stand out. Versus, I'd put it like right where Nargacuga is. I think they just kind of brought it
Yeah.
back and put it back in the game, and that's about it.
Yeah. A fine addition. Uh, can't be mad that it's back again, but we've seen it, we've played it, we've hunted it
Yeah,
a million times.
yeah. Now Toby coming. I mean, this is only Toby's second game because it came
Yep.
first in
In
World,
World.
and I think it fit a lot better in World. I'll be honest. It
Yeah.
didn't feel like it used. It really depended on using the environment, and it did
hmm
that sometimes in the jungle. But besides
If
that,
you're
I
fighting
think it
it
was
on as
lackluster.
flat of ground as
Yeah,
Rise sometimes has, I don't know, doesn't feel any different than many of the other early game monsters.
yeah. It really doesn't stand it, and it felt like it was using that theme of World, like being part of nature and part of its surroundings with the endemic life, and
hmm
I don't think it lived up to that because it just wasn't as pronounced in this one. So
Yeah.
I think we're sitting. Honestly, I'd put it below Arzuros even. I think I enjoyed
Yeah,
Arzuros
I'd agree.
more than
I
Toby.
don't think it adds anything to the point of game it comes in,
Yeah,
so it
I think it's gonna make it
kind
in
of
C, but
exists.
I don't think it supersedes any of these other monsters.
Yeah.
Now Volvidon's kind of a fun one, but another one where it's just like it's trying to annoy you, and
hmm
it has the same movement problem where it just kind of rolls away from you every time, and
Yeah.
you can get to it, but if you get to it or like use a wire bug while it's rolling, you might just get hit anyway, and then it's even
Right.
more of a pain.
Yeah. When it does the ball up and bounce like in the little zigzag line,
Yeah.
just
Um,
clips you enough to keep you from damaging
yeah.
it.
This one has never felt overwhelming. It's just more of a hassle than it is something I would ever want to do. I think this one would probably go in D for me, right
Yeah.
about at Basario's tier, I think.
hmm
would never be something that I willingly come back to.
Yeah, it's I wasn't excited by its inclusion in this. I get it. You need some early game monsters, but I think there other things do similar job better.
Yeah. And I know we talked about Apex Zinogre already. We kind of touched on base. I think honestly, base is just a little bit better because, like you said,
Yep.
then you actually get chances to hit it while it's winding up
Hmm.
before it's enraged. I'd put it right around Tigrex. I don't think they're going to keep including it in games to have
Yeah.
it kind of keep its streak, but I'm not going to be super excited about it.
Yeah. It's one that like once you get past the first phase of it being amped up, the fight seems pretty much over. All the danger kind of dissipates with that first down.
Yeah, I think the only way that this one improves for me is if they kind of add some new mechanics to a future game and then bring back Thunderlord and have it really fit in somewhere. I think that's
Yeah.
the only time that Zinogre would really get a boost up for me. Put him right there. Now the last two big, just title update monsters. Some of the last ones,
Hmm.
really unique. Starting with a Matsu, was really excited for this one to come back.
Yes. I think they did a great job of making Amatsu fit this game. It felt very different from when I remember fighting it in Generations. So I really enjoyed it, and obviously all the call outs to third generation in general, all the sound
Yeah, the
effects,
sound
the
effects. I think the verticality really helped it
Mhm.
out a lot in this one, and they used
Yes.
it to its fullest, like launching you all the way up. A lot of people did not get that one again in multiplayer. Had a bunch of fails when I did that one, so I had to solo it. But super fun. Obviously, they tried to jam it as part of the story, which I think worked well because they hinted to it a lot and people saw it coming.
Hmm.
So it was nice to actually see it come through. But I think it was a big improvement from its generation's counterpart, just because of the wire bugs and being able to use the great ones and go all the way up, stuff like that.
Yeah. And it's one, as opposed to like Guys McGorm and All Mother, I do feel like going back and playing this one from time to time.
Yeah, and
It's
its
unique.
moveset visually was fantastic. Like the saw
Yeah.
blades coming at you, kind of slicing
Yep.
um, vertically and horizontally, just kind of like harder to dodge. It like obstructs your vision with all the water tunnels. I think that was really cool. So super unique moveset for one of those endgame monsters, and definitely could have been like if they made it harder, it could have been maybe the final monster in the game.
Right. And I don't know how much you've looked into. People were kind of looking into the game's code and seeing Hazard Amatsu might be coming, but now that we've cleared through all the event quests that are going to come out, really would have liked to see a super version of it.
Yeah,
But
I
I
think I
think there's plenty of difficulty even in the base fight.
definitely would agree. I think it was a good amount of difficulty for one of the last title updates.
Hmm.
I would definitely put it in S. I would say
Yeah.
probably right above Primordial is where I would put it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the other ones had more impact.
yeah, but super glad to see it back. Hope
Hmm.
we'll see it back again. I think it kind of has to be a game where the mechanics fit it a little bit better. Last but not least, Velcana. I was not as excited to see it immediately after. I kind of wish they had
Right.
left it out of a game. I don't think it fit the theme as well, especially in Sunbreak.
I don't
Just
know. It just felt like a little odd. There, the pacing of the fight didn't feel as natural as it did in World.
yeah,
It's a fine fight. I didn't think it was that difficult. The only part that I really thought was especially annoying is when the icicles like start just kind of falling somewhat randomly around and you just get clipped by one of those. But
yeah.
oh,
I think it did feel a little bit too easy for sure.
yeah, compared to in World, it really felt like one of the final bosses.
Yeah,
This one is just like, oh, it's here.
yeah. It's almost
Oh,
because they put it so close to the end of all the updates. It felt like just so underwhelming when it was
Hmm.
put in, and it's just like I was expecting more of the Amatsu type monsters to kind of be those last ones, and Velcana was just kind of tossed in. Um, I think maybe the best part was just having the dog outfit and making your dog look like Velcana. Might have been the best
Yeah,
part.
I love all the weapons and armor and the music of Velcana, that kind of stuff. But I think the fight itself was a little lacking.
Yeah, would definitely agree. I know I have a 1 point of Frostcraft just randomly rolled onto one of my armor pieces for my final set.
Some Frostcraft sets are super fun, though.
It's true. It's true.
The Sacred Sheath longsword stuff is
Yeah, that stuff's wild.
silly.
I would
But yeah,
still, man, I would probably put it right next to Gasmagorn.
yeah,
I think
that's
it could have been a
where I
lot
was
better,
thinking. Yeah,
but I think that is a pretty good list overall. You know, I'm actually gonna put it under Violet. I like Violet more.
I'm not at a quick glance, I don't see any that really need to be shuffled around in their tiers.
Yeah, I would say this is a pretty decent distribution. Some monsters that definitely will probably get glow ups at some point. I hope,
Mhm.
but a lot.
Excited to see some of these in a different fighting style, like Magnum Hollow, because you can about guarantee a flagship's gonna show up again. What does Malzano look like in a future game? That's one that
Yeah, Malzeno is going to be
would
really
feel a
hard to
little
adapt.
weird, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think I think all these top tier S monsters really stand out. And I think it's a
Yeah.
really good thing. There were a lot of unique fights that just felt like a completely different world than one another. And I think that's a really good thing.
Hmm.